So I was clicking around the internet the other day and I noticed another CBC video. This time the video was about milk. And I was just laughing at the extent that they would go to create a controversy where there isn't one. Hello everyone, welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. The reason I do these videos is to help people to understand that your physical health and mental health come together to create your overall sense of well-being. If you actually find these kind of videos helpful, please consider subscribing. So our physical health, obviously the food we eat contributes to the body we create, which then, if our body feels good, that is a good step in the right direction of us feeling mentally healthy and good, right? If we feel sore and our body isn't functioning the way we want, we tend to be in the negative headspace. So when I saw this video, it was interesting to me because it starts off by talking about this family and they're conflicted about whether or not their children should be drinking milk.
Not very fond of milk just because I hear so many things about what's added in milk.
I love milk. I've been drinking it my whole life. I have it with every single meal.
But of course, both parents, still a couple, so trying to decide what's the best course of action. First of all, I'm laughing just at the whole idea that this became a video is because very basic in Canada, we're not allowed to have antibiotics in our milk or extra hormones. So, like there's regulations about what can be in milk. So the easy answer to this would have been for CBC to just put out some kind of statement saying, yeah, hormones are not illegal in Canada in milk, so therefore people don't have to worry. I'm not sure if that's a concern in the US. I believe it might be, but in Canada, not a concern. Okay. But dairy farming is a big thing in Canada. So obviously I feel like there's more to this video because they go on to point out that if you're trying to replace milk, you have to eat this ridiculous amount. Okay, so, one of the major reasons that milk is promoted so much is because we're informed that we really need a lot of calcium. And we chase calcium because it's good for our bones, it's good for our teeth, our nails, our hair. And I find that hilarious that the reason that we are, or I should say the most notable reason that we are told that we should have a good amount of calcium is for strong bones and teeth. When in fact, calcium is vital to making sure that your heart is pumping, so your muscles are functioning well, your heart being a muscle, and vital to the ability of your body's blood to clot. If you don't have calcium, I feel like if your heart's not working or your blood isn't able to, that's a much bigger health concern than the possibility that you break a bone, although that's not a good thing either. I just find it interesting where our attention is. So why is it that our teeth and bones have so much calcium to begin with? Well, interestingly enough, it's because that's where our body stores it. The reason our body stores so much calcium is because it's that vital in keeping our heart going, keeping our blood flowing, or not flowing in the case of I got a cut and my body needs to patch this up. But the other thing that's really interesting is that it's involved in so much else in our bodies. So in the video, they say that we need 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day. And I just want to start there by saying that it's not consensus around the world that we need 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day. So for some reason in North America, we are being told to have about double the amount of calcium that the rest of the world is having because the World Health Organization says we need about 500, maybe 520 when we're over 50 for ladies. So why is it that in North America, such a large amount of calcium is being pushed on people? Yeah, and I kind of wonder about the whole, dairy industry, the whole we make money off of this product. But okay, I'm trying my best. Okay, I feel like I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So let me just back up a little bit. So calcium is tightly regulated in our body. And I feel like I'm constantly saying that, carbohydrates are tightly regulated, calcium's tightly, basically your body tightly regulates almost every nutrient that it possibly can because this is such a complex system. Keeping it running efficiently, correctly, healthily, it takes a lot of management of every single thing that we have in us. So calcium is tightly regulated. There's 4 basic things I'm going to talk about that help to regulate calcium, although I'm sure there are more of them, is a hormone, a vitamin, and 2 minerals. So the hormone is the parathyroid hormone. That hormone, when it's released into the system, encourages bone to release calcium back into the system, bone and teeth, right? Back into the system. The vitamin D, D3, which our body produces from exposure to the sun, when you have vitamin D3 involved, what that's doing is it's encouraging the reuptake of calcium. So calcium being taken back through the intestines, and it does also help the bones to release the calcium. So then you also have magnesium and phosphorus. And the way that they function is a little bit different. Basically, their levels will determine how much calcium. So if there's too much of them in the system, there will be less calcium, and vice versa. So basically, they kind of inversely related to each other. But it's not a perfect inverse relationship. Again, not a doctor. I'm just letting you know that these 4 elements seem to be playing the biggest role in how much serum calcium you have floating around. Now, all of this to say that this 1,000 milligrams that they're talking about is interesting because we eat calcium to replace what gets used, because when we have excess, so too much calcium, one of the ways that our body manages too much calcium in the blood is to excrete it in feces and urine and sweat, so we can, eliminate it. So this is where it becomes interesting, because if we're sometimes eliminating it, then we need to replace it because we can't produce it. So calcium is something that we need to ingest. Okay, so how do we ingest it? Well, this is where this video becomes really crazy, right? Because they're saying the best possible place to get your calcium is milk. And basically the idea being, if you eliminate milk,
based on their food diaries, this is what they eat in a day.
There's the milk.
Health Canada's current guidelines say adults and kids need 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day, while toddlers need 700 for proper bone development. So how do the Kims stack up?
So the kids are getting about half, and you 2 are getting about a third of what you need daily.
Remember, mom and dad need 1,000 milligrams of calcium, about 3 cups of milk. That's equal to about 3 bunches of broccoli, 20 cups of chopped kale, or 2.5 cans of sardines with bones. Gina would need to eat this much extra food.
This is Aria's.
Aria needs this much.
Jimmy's.
Jimmy, this much more.
And Eden's.
And Eden, he needs to eat this much.
the thing is that if you don't drink milk, according to them, you need to double, like pretty much what you're eating in a day. And that's where I start to cringe, right? Because that's not true. So let's go through some numbers, because I hate it. I absolutely hate it when, in order to promote something, they use lies rather than just promote it in a way that says, hey, you know what, milk's good for you. You can drink it if you don't have any kind of sugar-related issues and you're going to be fine, which is true. If you have 0 sugar-related issues and you drink milk, you're going to be fine. There's nothing really saying that kids can't drink milk. It's a beverage. What's really important to recognize is that calcium is so important that having the right amount in your body matters. So floating around your blood. We always have calcium because we have bones. So we always have calcium. We have teeth, right? We have nails. There's always somewhere for our body to take some calcium from if it needs it. So if our blood needs some calcium, it will get it. At the same time, we need to replenish. So having the correct amount of calcium, according to David A. Goldstein, he wrote a chapter in a book, in a science book back in 1990, and he was talking about the fact that keeping your serum calcium concentrations at the right amount were important, because you can either develop hypocalcemia if you have too little calcium, or hypercalcemia, which means you have too much calcium. Now, if you have hypocalcemia, some of the possible problems you could have, so not enough calcium in the blood, could lead to tetany, which is the contraction of muscles that can range from tingles in the fingers and toes, like in the extremities, to pain in the hands and the feet, to numbness in the hands and the feet, depending on how each person experiences it. But basically, it's the contraction of muscles that are contracting inappropriately because you don't have enough calcium. Another issue that you can have is convulsive seizures from not having enough calcium. Another issue you can have is cardiovascular issues, psychiatric issues. So basically, if you don't have enough calcium, your brain function can change significantly enough that you start to have psychiatric issues. And a variety of ectodermal issues. If you have too much calcium in the blood, so hypercalcemia, then you can have soft tissue calcification, which means that all your soft tissues, like your heart, your blood vessels, like all the soft tissues within your body can get calcified. You can have a type of renal tubule damage that's called, I'm going to try to say this properly, tubular tubulointerstitial. You could possibly have tubulointerstitial nephropathy, which basically would lead to renal failure. You could have anorexia, again, so a physiological issue causing an eating behavior, an eating disorder. You can have nausea, you can have electrocardiographic disturbances, and a spectrum of neurologic changes from headache to coma, so again, affecting the brain. So calcium being at the correct amount is actually very important. Okay, so now that we know that, it's not as if what the CBC is talking about isn't an important topic, right? The question is, though, do we need to prioritize milk as the place for getting our calcium? Is milk the best place to prioritize for getting our calcium? Are we doing ourselves a service by doing this? Why don't we start by just comparing the different sources that they talked about in the video? Because they said if you wanted to replace a glass of milk with, so if we take a glass to be 250 milliliters, which for this, we're going to use grams because everything else is measured in grams. So 100 grams of milk is 97 milliliters. 100 grams of milk is 110 milligrams of calcium. Remember, according to the World Health Organization, we need 500. According to Canadian, standard American quotas, we need 1,000. So at that point, a glass of milk, 1 cup, would give you about 225-ish milligrams of calcium. 100 grams of kale will give you 250 milligrams of calcium. Then what you really realize is that at that point, for just a mere 200 grams of kale, you're going to get half your daily allowance for the standard diet or your full allowance for the World Health Organization. Now, depending on how you cook your kale, if you actually cook it, that's not that much. If you eat it raw, it's a salad's worth. Now, another great source of calcium is nuts and seeds. And this is something that a lot of people who do other lifestyles like paleo will tell you. So, for example, sesame seeds, 100 grams of sesame seeds actually gives you 980 milligrams. So almost the full amount for the standard American diet and double what the World Health Organization would suggest that you need. Almonds would give you 260 milligrams of calcium for 100 grams of almonds. It actually, all of a sudden, doesn't seem so hard to get the calcium that you need. Now, I'm going to point out, if you're doing a standard Canadian, standard American diet, this is super easy, right? Eat some nuts, even Brazil nuts. I mean, there's so many other nuts that you could eat. Like, it's not just these two. Eat some nuts, eat some seeds, you're going to be fine. However, pointing you in another direction, if you're doing a keto lifestyle, it might be a little bit harder to eat that much nuts or that much seeds, so you will have to pay more attention to the leafy greens and the vegetables. And I want to go back to the vegetables in a minute, but I want to point something out, because I just want to go back for a minute. I want to talk about what the actual goal of milk is, because mammals produce milk for a very specific purpose. When so baby mammals are born, the goal of milk is to rapidly grow this infant to a stage where they can be somewhat self-sufficient. And if you just take a look at baby pictures, so if you look at your newborn baby and your baby at 2 years old, the amazing difference in the look of that child between 0 and 2 is night and day, what those two renderings of the same person looks like. It's the same way that if you take a baby, so a newly born baby cat or a newly born baby dog or any other mammal, and compare it to a weaned version of that animal, so one that's no longer taking milk from the mother, again, huge differences, right? I want people to think about the fact that for most of us, we don't consider the fact that milk is there to rapidly grow our bones and get us to a position, and our teeth, to get us to a position where we can eat grown-up food. And so because we need that source, from 0 to when we wean our children, and everybody's different, every culture's different, anywhere between 9 months and 2 years in that time frame, that's normal for kids to be drinking milk. But after that point, do they really need to be drinking milk when there are other sources of calcium available? Now, if we look at the animal world, we see that the answer to that question is no. Because in the animal world, there is no other place where you'll see a weaned, so an animal that's old enough to eat with its teeth, still breastfeeding, as far as I know. If there is one, please let me know. But as far as I know, humans are the only animals that do that. The other thing you won't see is that an animal that will drink the milk of another animal. So, like, for example, a monkey that's going to drink cow's milk, or a cow that's going to drink, goat's milk, or like, we tend to see that the animal weans from its parent, and then after that point is no longer taking milk. I'm saying this because I want us to think about the idea that just because we can do stuff doesn't necessarily mean that we should or have to be doing it. Sure, again, I'm not suggesting that people should never drink milk again, but I'm looking at that report and I'm trying to understand why they're so adamant that milk is the best place to get calcium when there's clearly other places to get calcium that give you more calcium per 100 grams than milk. The other thing I want to point out, I was watching some videos in my preparation for this, and I found a video by Dr. Berry where he points out that there have been studies that show that supplementing with calcium and even drinking milk and other sources of highly available calcium have been shown to cause cardiovascular issues. So the research is pointing towards extra calcium, so unnecessarily high calcium causes cardiovascular issues. Now, he also mentioned that there's research that are suggesting that there's other issues that could happen. But it seemed like the cardiovascular issues were the ones that they were actually able to show some kind of link for. So the reason I bring this up is I want to just ask, are we putting ourselves in the position where we're chasing such a high amount of calcium based on no research? Again, that was something else he pointed out, that there's no actual research that shows that all this extra calcium that we're trying to ingest is healthy for us and doing what we want it to do, which is create strong bones. I feel like, again, heart health is more important. I, again, feel like blood clotting is more important. But even having strong bones, of course, is important long into my future. And the question is, is what we're trying to achieve with all the milk and all the calcium supplements actually giving us what we're trying to achieve? And it seems like the answer to that is no. It seems like in North America, we actually have more incidents of osteoporosis and bone fractures. And now, of course, we play a lot of sports. I don't know if the other continents play as many sports as we do. I think they do, but for some reason, we tend to have all these issues. And we are also the continent that drinks the most milk and has the most supplementation of calcium, according to Dr. Berry, as I was watching that video as well. So it's a very interesting idea that he puts forward. Again, not a doctor. I'm throwing this out there for people to think about, do more research, share the information with me. I'm curious about this topic, but it frustrates me whenever I see misleading information being used to push a product. Because again, I'll just go back to, if I'm trying to get 500 milligrams of calcium per day, if I look at the World Health Organization numbers, then, if I eat broccoli, 120 grams of broccoli is going to give me 112 milligrams of calcium. So again, and that's 120 grams. I'm going to eat more than that. I'm just telling you the baseline number. So I feel like it's so easy. If you do eat carbs, 200 grams of cooked white beans would give you 132 milligrams. Oh my gosh, if you eat cheese, so again, and I know cheese is part of the dairy world. It's not the point. The point is that they were saying don't take the milk away. That's one product. That's one product that they're pushing to say, oh, just drink 2 or 3 glasses of milk. So 2 or 3 glasses of milk versus 30 grams of cheese. When you eat 30 grams of hard cheese, you get 240 milligrams of calcium. So, that's a great trade right there, because 30 grams of hard cheese is going to be like 1.5 grams of carbs, maybe, if that much, maybe even less. And if you go for the softer cheeses, then 60 grams would give you 270. So the most interesting to me was that they never talk about meat. So it almost makes it seem as if there isn't any calcium in meat. So for example, beef has only about 6 milligrams per 100 grams, but it's still some calcium there. And if you compare it to the vegetables that they tell you to go after sometimes, so interesting to me. Chicken has 17, and an egg has 27 milligrams. Again, is it huge amounts? No, but all of these things add up. If you think about like what you eat in a day, if I'm adding up all the bits of calcium that I'm getting, chances are I'm doing pretty well. But here's something even more important for us to think about, because again, if I'm not in the scenario where I'm excessively losing calcium, because that would be problematic, and that would be hypocalcemia, which with all those symptoms I told you earlier. But if I'm not in that situation, then part of the also important thing is having enough vitamin D3 to allow my body to reuptake calcium rather than eliminating it when my body needs to, right? Because of course I'm going to eat calcium, because apparently it's in so much stuff that I eat, and I didn't even realize how many of the things that I actually eat have calcium in them. But we oftentimes disregard the biggest source of calcium that's on our plate, which is the bones of the meats that we're eating. So most of us are aware, if you eat sardines, because those bones are really well cooked and you can just eat them down, you get a good amount of calcium from that. But guess what? Depending on how you cook your meats, you can also do the same thing with a lot of your meats. So when you make a soup and you cook it to a point where the actual bones of the so like how you start with the bone and let that bone dissolve in there before you add the rest of your stuff, if you make one of those nice long cooked soups, that's another way to get a lot of calcium. Which brings me to the other thing that they don't mention in the video, bone broth. And if I remember correctly, bone broth gives you 187 milligrams of calcium per 100 grams. There's so many places that you can actually get calcium that are not explored, because they want to scare you by saying, oh, you have to eat double the amount of food per day in order to, and it's not true, it's not reality, right? If you make a nice bone broth, you can either drink it straight, you can use it to make your soups. There's lots of ways to get that extra calcium that you're looking for. I think it would be very easy to replace milk out of your diet. I know I haven't drank milk in years, for lactose reasons, for keto diet reasons. But I do eat dairy, so I'm not going to say that I don't have any dairy, because I do. But I think that this idea that only milk can give you the amount of calcium that you need is a fallacy. Do I think that if you do drink milk, it's a good place to get? It's good. Is it the best? It's still not even the best. I think cheese would be a better place to get your calcium. And bang for the buck in terms of carbohydrate intake, much better than drinking milk. So I would encourage everybody who is worried about calcium, focus on getting enough D3. Focus on making sure that you have a good level of magnesium and phosphate in your body as well. Make sure that all your electrolytes are stable, because I feel like that's probably the place where most people will get out of whack with their calcium, because their other electrolytes and their other minerals are out of whack, and then your body's always trying to keep everything balanced, right? Like I said, we're such a complicated machine. Our body is always trying to keep us balanced, and it's going to dump some things to keep other things at the right level, and it's constantly doing that, which possibly could lead to you having not enough calcium in your blood at a particular point in time. So do more research. I always want to just tell you to do more research, because this research that I've done got me to this point of where I'm saying, you know what? I don't think it's milk that's playing the big role. I know for myself, I feel great. I know for myself, my bones are strong and I'm doing well, but it doesn't mean because I am, you are, right? Like, you need to pay attention to how straight your bones are. Are they still holding up? Are you able to do exercise? That's the other great thing, is that what's the best way to build bones? Just to do weight-bearing exercise, right? Doing push-ups and sit-ups and running upstairs and lifting heavy things and carrying your kids around and playing with your kids and all the normal activities that cause our bones to get a little stress and then like grow a bit. The same way that our muscles need stress to grow, our bones need stress to grow. And you want to do it in the best possible, healthiest way. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. Love making these videos for you guys. Wellness Warriors, always happy that you come back. Everybody who's new, please subscribe, ring the bell, do the things. If you'd like to contribute to the production of videos, all the information is in the description below, Amazon links, and Patreon account. Thanks for coming by. Talk to you again next week.